Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this from. My name's Charles Stevenson, and I'm here today, London's Calling, to talk about external services and flow. But probably first of all, it's worth saying it's a shame that we couldn't all be here together in person. But obviously, everybody's priority is to stay healthy and safe, so I hope everybody at home is feeling well, and we'll get together later in the year and have some more face-to-face interaction, and I'd love to meet you all and get some feedback from you later in the year. Okay, so this is me. I've been working with Salesforce for about 10 years on client side, mostly as a solo admin developer at fairly small companies. I'm a Lightning champion, which means that I've been through a couple of Lightning migrations, which I'd be very happy to talk to anybody about if they had questions around. Particularly, doing it for small teams with very small budgets. I have some experience of that. I may need to update my profile picture if we stay isolated for much longer, but that was me. So external services, what are they? It's a feature which has been around for a couple of years, but Salesforce have made some enhancements to it recently, and it doesn't seem to get a huge amount of publicity around the community, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity today to share what I've found by playing with it, and make sure you get it out there and make people aware that it's an option that we have as admins. Now, this is an admin or an advanced admin session, but I am going to cover some sort of developer topics, so I'm trying to make sure that everybody is sort of up to speed. So what I'm going to cover today is really just a little setting of making sure we all understand APIs or to a high enough level. Flow, hopefully everybody watching this is a big fan of Flow. It's certainly one of my favorite tools. I'm going to give a demo, pray to the demo gods to show how I set it up, and then a bit of feedback and resources that you can follow later on. So I had a genuine business problem last year that I was trying to solve. We are using Sales Cloud, and our sales guys win a deal. So we have a closed won opportunity in Salesforce. But we need to get some of that information out of Salesforce into our back-end system. So partnerize.com is our marketing system that we sell. And I knew that Salesforce had good API support, obviously. Partnerize.com has really good API support as well, so I knew that it was going to be possible, but the question was what tool in the middle are we going to use? And probably the default option would have been either some Apex code or an external third-party integration tool like a MuleSoft or something like that would have been good ways. But then I heard about external services, so I thought this would be a scenario I could test out to see if this would be appropriate for us. So, what is an API? Hopefully, everybody vaguely knows what an API is, but just for clarity, an API is, we talk about requests and responses. An API request has a verb at the start, like get or post. Get means to fetch something, and post means to send something. So, a request might be something like get customer, where the customer name equals Acme. And the response comes back with a code. It always has a numeric code, and then a body of the response. So 200 is a positive response, that's good news. Other numbers are bad news, but in this case, yes, the API has responded correctly to say that there is no customer called Acme in the backend system. We might send the details for Acme, so I'm going to send the name and the region. Again, I get a 200 back, and this time I'm getting an ID back. So this would be something that we might store in Salesforce as being like an external ID, or we want to refer to later. And then just to show when it doesn't work, you're going to get other numeric codes, and they've all got conventions, but 400s are all bad news. 404 you might recognize from websites because it follows the same kind of naming convention as with APIs. And basically, it's just saying that get lunch menu, not found. We don't have an API to support what's for lunch today, so you're going to get a 404 not found. Like I say, hopefully everybody who's interested in this topic is already a fan or a user of Flow, but just make sure that everybody is. On the left-hand side there, this is the Flow Designer. It's a drag-and-drop canvas interface for admins to build logic. So we've got some branching and lookups and record saves and conditional logic, that kind of stuff all built within that quite relatively newer interface, lightning friendly. And you can build two things. You can build a visual flow, visual screens, and these give us admins the ability to build user interfaces for our users, which are different from the standard page layouts. So, we can have input fields, radio buttons, sliders, all that kind of nice user interface. And typically it's a kind of wizard interface where you have multiple screens in a sort of step 1, step 2, step 3 process, and it can be as complicated or as simple as you need. And the other thing you can build is what's called an auto-launched flow, and this is where there's no user interface, but it happens in the background, maybe after a record has been saved. So it's like a workflow rule, but on steroids, because you can make it much more complicated in terms of branching logic and conditional lookups and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to concentrate on visual flows just because it's a little bit easier to demonstrate. Okay, so what do we need to do to set up an external flow, external service? The first thing is named credentials, and this just tells Salesforce where this external API lives, what's its URL, and the security model it uses, which is quite important. The second piece is the external service itself, and what we're going to do is we're going to import a schema, which allows Salesforce to understand what the API's definition is. And then the third step is to build a flow to demonstrate actually what it looks like. And that could be as complicated or as simple as you need it to be. Okay, so enough talking. Now we're going to try and have a demo and pray to the demo gods. So I've got a new Scratch org here, which I've just built. Very simple. I can't seem to control the mouse for it, unfortunately, but bear with me. Great. Okay, so a new Scratch org. Just built it this week. There's really nothing in it. I've created a record, good old Acme Corp. And there's really nothing in here, as you can see. The only thing I've built is over here on this right-hand side, I've embedded a flow. And as you should know, within Lightning, you can embed flows within Lightning pages. So I've got this thing called budget approval, and the idea might be that we need the salespeople to give us some information about the client's budget before they are approved to proceed as a business or something like that. Maybe like an online credit reference agency. And we wouldn't have that information inside Salesforce. So we need to call an API externally to go and ask, is this client acceptable for our business model? Does it meet our criteria for their credit worthiness, for example? But just as a fun example. It's gone away and it's come back with the answer of approved, which is great news. Now, little secret between you and me, actually this API is actually just a random generator. It just generates randomly yes, no, or maybe. So I didn't know what was going to come back then, but it comes back with yes, no, maybe, and a nice little GIF of, looks like Christian Bale saying yes in this case, but if we press finish, over on the left-hand side, you can see the description has been changed to approved. Now, in the real world, obviously, that probably would be a checkbox or some other business process that you'd want to trigger off approval, but that's fine. If we run it again, we might get a no, but let's see what happens. Oh, good, okay. So yeah, nice simple example. I want to show you how I set that up and how we can hopefully extend that to a more real-world business scenario. So first of all, I found this API. It's called Yes No, and it's got a website with a bit of explanation about it. But I was able to execute it here just in the browser, so you can see what it looks like. Up here in the URL, hopefully you can see at home. It's got yes no / API (force equals yes), and that's a parameter saying force is yes. And the responses come back with an answer of yes, forced was true, and there's the image. I'm not sure which image that is, but that's presumably some celebrity nodding away. So this is the API, and this is what it looks like. So at the top in the URL, effectively that's the request, and in the body, this is the response. And just to sort of show that, if I change that to forced equals no, we're going to get a no back and presumably some celebrity shaking his head or her head. So that's the API, and there's some documentation on the site, and you need that documentation to generate what's called a Schema API. And this can be the most complicated piece, by no doubt about it, and you probably will need some help from the developer of the API to set this up. It's human readable, and I managed to figure it out, but it's not necessarily the simplest thing in the world. This is a Schema API this is the Schema API for this yes/no API. Up at the top here, we've got some sort of header stuff. Swagger 2.0 is the schema definition file type. It's also known as Open API, and it seems to be becoming the industry standard for schema definitions, but certainly what Salesforce is pushing. There are others out there, but this is Swagger 2.0. There's the host and its HTTPS. The path, it's a get, like we saw before. Takes one parameter, this force that we saw, which is to tell it I want a yes or I want a no, or I'm happy to leave it random. And then you're going to get a response back which looks like this. So it's got the properties of the answer, which is yes, no, whether it was forced or not, and the image. So really simple, one parameter, which is actually optional, and 3 return parameters, which is there. So we're going to need that file, and like I say, I can't deny that can be quite complicated to create and set up. So you may need some help from the developer of the API, but it's not impossible. And there are some really good online tools. Swagger itself has a great website. One of the things it's got is it's got an editor, and you can copy and paste that schema in here, and it will parse it and check that it works, and it will actually also come out and give you just a confirmation that what you've input does really work. So you've got here, it's over HTTPS, it's a get, it takes the parameter of force, and the response comes back looking like that. So this is proving that it's working, and you can even actually try it out, and you can run things from live here if you want to. So Swagger, I would say, is a nice resource, free. There are other tools out there. There's a nice one which converts JSON files into schema objects as well, which I used a little bit too. Okay, so that's the API. How do we actually do this in Salesforce? Remember, there are 3 things we need to do. The first of them is named credentials. If I make this a little bigger, this one was really simple because, as we saw, it's a publicly available API and has no security, but it's very simple. Basically, it's the URL of where the API is and what the security model is. And it can be as complicated as you need it to be. I think, honestly, it will support pretty much every security requirement you're going to have, but it will take OAuth or username or password or a hash or a key or all those kind of standard security models. I'd be surprised if you found a security model that wouldn't be supported. So that's really simple, really nothing to do there. The second step is the actual external service itself. So let's recreate this one as if it was from new. I'm going to copy and paste this file. Notice we're on enhanced external services. I think this came out in in the winter 20 release. And it removed some of the earlier restrictions, but I'll cover that later. You have to give it a name, so I'm going to call it yes, no, 2. What credentials is it using? Obviously the yes, no credential. You should give it a better description in real life, but there you go. You've got 2 options. If the API publishes its schema online, then that's great. It makes it a little bit easier for you. You could put it in as the URL, but in this case, certainly, I'm going to paste it as a file here. And pray to the demo gods, press save. And what's happening in the background is Salesforce is analyzing that schema file and making sure it understands it correctly, just like Swagger was doing. And the good news is, yeah, it's as we expected. It's come back with the input parameter of force and the output parameter of type object. And this is important, and I'll explain why later, but it's coming back with an object. Great, so that worked. Now over in Flow, this is the one which we saw before, but I'll create a new version or a new new version. This is the option, whether it's auto-launched or screen. I'm going to do screen so that you guys can see something, but so here we go. On the left-hand side, we have this action icon here, which we're going to drag on. And you can look through this list here, but if you change from category to type, you'll see external services are listed down here. And we've now got two. We've got the one I had before and the new one I've just created. So let's pick that one. And this is the step in the flow which is going to go and get the information. So I'm going to call it something like get yes, no. And let's send the force parameter just so you can see. I'm going to literally type the word yes. Probably, and in my example that I was showing earlier, that would be a variable. It'd be something from a previous screen, perhaps, that somebody had entered. So you could use a valuable variable rather than a literal text. You can manually assign the variables, but there's no need to, and it handles that for you. So let's connect those two things up. Save. And just debug. This is a great tool for those who don't use it. It means you don't have to activate it, but you can run it as if it was running for real, but it's just a quick and dirty way to see what you've built so far, how it's running. So it's all finished, which is great because it didn't do very much. But over on the right-hand side, you can see input yes, and it's come back with a response, which is great news. So it's come back with a yes and an image, which is exactly what we were hoping for. So that's looking good. Now, I said one of the things that was nice about this external services, the way it handles in Flow, is it comes back as an object, and that's kind of cool. So I want to show in this very simple example, but let's just show some of the output from this the get that we've just done. So I'm just going to bring on some display text. And over here on the right-hand side, it has created this object here called the output from the get yes no. It knows it's a 200 response, which was successful, which is good news, but you would also see the error codes there if we'd handled a more complicated example. And that might be useful because you might want to display the error message to the user or handle it in some sort of branching logic. Say if it's failed, then maybe try again, or if it's check the inputs or something like that. But in this case, we're just going to take the good response, and you can see it's using the kind of the dot notation that we'll see everywhere else in formulas and whatever. So get yes no dot 200 dot answer means show me the answer from that response. Well, let's get the actual image URL as well. So great, connect that up. Debug it again. And yeah, you can see now we've got a screen here that is showing the answer was yes, and the URL of that GIF was this. And so really that's the very bare basic bones of how I set up the real flow that I was using for budget approval. But you can see that the nice thing is that on maybe a more complicated object, you get access to all of the variables of the response in that kind of dot notation, which makes it really convenient. The alternatives, if we were using Apex or something, are not so admin friendly. So this should be something that an admin would feel confident in being able to understand once it's been set up and working, how to handle the different parts of the response and to conditional logic, for example. In the example I showed earlier, if the response was yes, I was updating the account record to say that it was approved. But as you can see, it's very basic, but it works, and it is admin friendly, which I think is really the key that I wanted everybody to see today. I think that really covers it. Also, we've got the named credential, the external service where we imported the API definition schema file, and then we built a very simple demo. So that was really external services sort of at a very high level. Now let's go back to my slides. So yeah, like I say, the conclusions are, after playing with it a bit, you are building it with clicks, not code. The exception is that importing of the Schema API definition file, which I can't deny can be a bit developer-y, but hopefully you're just doing copy and paste, which is one of my favorite development tools. Secure API credentials. Salesforce is handling the security for us, and it will make it as secure as you need it to be and as secure as the API requires at the back end. I'd be surprised if you find an example where the security model isn't supported. And like I said, we can build powerful user interfaces with that kind of rich visual flows, or we could build process automation. So as I said earlier, you might update the record after the user has pressed save, go out and run some background business logic to update the record, or to notify people, or to run any kind of more complicated business process that you might need. And it comes back, it uses fairly simple data types. It's strings and integers and those kind of things which we are all familiar with. But the nice thing about it is that it does handle this rich JSON object, JavaScript object notation. So you can understand the structure of the response. It not just comes back as a lump of text, it does have some internal structure that you can see what the different variables of that response actually look like. However, there definitely are some caveats to all this. If the thing you want to talk to is a commercially available piece of software, or something like your back-end finance system, the first place to look would be the App Exchange. There's probably a richer solution on the App Exchange already there. It'll be much easier for us admins to use. It'll be supported and handled by that company. So clearly, if you're talking to a finance system, start with the App Exchange. That would be crazy to try and build it all from scratch. Or an integration tool. So MuleSoft obviously is probably the prime example that Salesforce would recommend these days, but there are other API handling solutions out there which will do things like handle the logic and handle things like timeouts and more complicated business processes that you might need in a more enterprise kind of scenario. But that would also be what I would recommend if you were doing something that was more of enterprise level integration. But it works, and it's a fun, relatively simple tool for admins to get up and working with simple APIs. And I very much feel that Salesforce are putting some weight behind it. I spoke to the product manager about this out in Dreamforce, and they see this as being an evolution, that they want admins to become more empowered to work with APIs in the future. So there's always a place for your developers, but they're hoping to kind of move the bar towards the admin end or the advanced admin end of the scale. So, however, currently there are some limitations. It doesn't handle complex data structures very well. So the JSON object that comes back, if it's nested, it contains collections, lists, groups of arrays and that kind of stuff, it ain't going to work. So you need a fairly simple API definition, but that can be, something you manage. The schema definition size, they say they've increased the file size of that file that we copied and pasted in. I think the limit was 100,000, and they say they've imported it, but I still found limitations. My company's API is really complicated, really big, and so I was breaking that 100,000 limit quite quickly. And the schema types, like I said, it's currently supporting a couple of file formats. I think interagent, certainly this Open API or Swagger. I don't know why they're called two different things, but it's the same thing, Open API and Swagger 2.0. But they are looking at supporting other schema formats in the future. And they know they need to do some more stuff around handling more complicated data structures. So I think, definitely this is a point in time where it's worthwhile exploring. I don't think it's perhaps ready for the full kind of enterprise use, but it definitely is worth a play, and I would recommend admins have a look at it and see if they can make use of it. There are loads of good APIs out there, like that yes/no one I found. There's some entertaining ones where you can get joke of the day or that kind of stuff, or weather forecasts or currency conversions, little things like that, which might be a very small solution where you need to, or postcode lookup, you need to just send a simple thing and get a simple response. As always, there's a Trailhead module, which I would recommend. I also found a good YouTube from last year's Trailhead DX, which helped me build this demo. And I've mentioned Swagger a couple of times. That's their website, swagger.io, and it's got some really handy tools to help you understand and tune your APIs. And with that, really, thank you. That was all I wanted to cover today. I would obviously have loved to have heard some questions and get some feedback from people, but I hope online I'm available. If you can find me, I don't use Twitter hugely, but at Charlie_S, and I'm available on the communities at Success Community and various other places, and I'm quite a regular attendee at the London user groups, so I look forward to meeting you all again when we're back to normal, and hopefully we can share some more knowledge, and I look forward to hearing how you use it. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Peter Coffey, Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce. I'm here live on the expo floor at Dreamforce, still the world's largest single company technology event. The word capado, it means you've got this, and I think that's what people want from DevOps. They want a high level of assurance so that they can go do what they do, which is understand their customers and bring them an experience they've never had before. I'm Peter Coffey with Salesforce, encouraging you to build on capado.